Very welcome to all. In this video, we'll be discussing about routing concepts using Cisco Packet Tracer tool. Particularly, we'll be talking about static routing, how to do static routing using Cisco Packet Tracer tool. Before that, let us have a small introduction about routing. So what is actually routing is? Routing is a process which is performed by layer 3 or network layer. So layer 3 and network layer are interchangeably used. This network is a routing is a process which is performed by layer 3 devices in order to deliver the packet by choosing an optimal path from one network to other network. For example, from the 1.1 network to 2.2 network or 1.1 to 1.2 network, whatever may be, if I need to send a packet across the network, if it is not within a network, if it is outside the network, I should go with the process called as routing. So in general, I can say that routing is a process which is used for inter-device communication, right? So routing is a process which is performed by layer 3 devices in order to deliver the packet by choosing an optimal path from one network to the another network. So there are three types of routing. First one is called as static routing. Second one is default routing. The third one is dynamic routing. Static routing and default routing are used in some cases, but most of the cases where we are communicating with the internet service providers will use with dynamic routing. So what is actually the static routing? This static routing is a process in which we have to manually add routes in routing table, right? If I'm having 100 routers, the network administrator should go to 100 routers and manually add the routes in the routing table. Okay, so this is not an efficient technique because there are so many issues. We'll see what are the issues we'll be facing. The second one is default routing. In the case of default routing, this method is suitable to connect either to end-to-end devices or to connect it to the internet. Also will be using this type of default routing. It is far more better technique than the static routing. Here in this method, the router is configured to send all the packets towards a single router. For example, if I'm having a network which is connected, which is a router which is connected to a internet service provider, all the packets will be routed to that particular hop. Okay, like a second one is does not matter to which network the packet belongs to. It is forwarded out to router which is configured for default routing. The last one is it is generally used with the stub routers. We'll know stub router is a router which has only one route to reach all the networks. Okay, for example, if there is a 100 routers, the 100th router can be a default router, as well as the first router can be a default router, whereas the other routers are all inside the network. These are all can be a static routing can be used here, whereas in the end devices which is connected to other networks will go with the default routing method. Understood? Okay, so the last method is dynamic routing. In the case of dynamic routing, this dynamic routing dynamically, it will be able to route the packets from any source to any destination. Here protocols like RIP protocol and OSPF protocol, we call it as routing information protocol, and open shortest path first protocol. RIP protocol and the OSPF protocol, routing information protocol and open shortest path first protocol. Both protocols are used to send packets across the networks. Okay, here's this dynamic routing protocol uses protocols to discover network destinations and other routes to reach it. Automatic adjustment will be made to reach the network destination if one route goes down. Whenever one of the route is going down, even in that case, we'll be able to use this sort of dynamic routing. So dynamic routing will make automatic adjustment of the routes according to the current state of the route. Even in the case of dynamic routing, what happens, even if some routers are removed, if some routers are removed or if some routers are inserted inside, even in that case, we'll be able to send packets without disturbing the network. That is the very good advantage of this dynamic routing process. And now let us start with static routing. We'll see what is actually static routing, what are the advantages of static routing, what are the disadvantages of static routing, and we'll see how to perform static routing in the with the help of Cisco packet tracer tool. Okay, what is a static routing is? A static route is created, maintained, and updated by a network administrator manually. Please make a note. See here, the static route is created, maintained, and updated by a network administrator. So this network administrator is the responsible person to do all sort of routings. Okay, if I'm having 100 routers, all the 100 routers need to be created, maintained, and updated by a network administrator. So this is very tedious process. Hope you can understand that, because if suppose one of the router is going out of the network, in that case also I should able to add the router concepts into that router. For example, if there is one router is going out of the network, I cannot able to manage it, because all the connections may be coming in as an inter-domain routing. So in that case, I cannot use this static route. The second one is static route. To every network must be configured on every router for full connectivity. For example, if there is n number of connections are established, all the routers should be done with static routing. It is mandatory need for all the destination IDs. The why do we use this static routing? What are the advantages of this static routing? Is this static routes are not advertised over the network, which is resulting in a better security. And these routers will not share static routes with each other. Hence, it will reduce the CPU or RAM overhead and saves the bandwidth. Okay, so advertisement is not done. So that obviously there is a saving of bandwidth in the case of static routing. But more than the advantages, there are some disadvantages with the static routing process. Okay, what are the static routing disadvantages? If I see, initial configuration as well as the maintenance is very time consuming process, and the configuration is error prone, especially in case of larger networks. It is when there is some errors happening. Obviously, errors are more. Why do we experience that? This is when there are 100 routers, a network administrator should manually go to each and every router and do the configuration. So there are possibility for human errors to happen. So these errors may give a very high disturbances to the network. And the third point is administrator intervention is required to maintain changing route information. This, whenever there is a change in the information, whenever there is a router information is changed or a new router is added, in that cases, the administrator should able to add all the routes to the existing one also. This we'll see today. What is the difficulty? We'll do when while we're doing the hands-on session, we'll experience what is the real problem is. And does not scale well with growing networks. Maintenance becomes very cumbersome. It is very tedious task, and it also requires the complete knowledge of the whole network for proper implementation. If there are 100 routers and there are some 100 routers with 1000 networks, all the networks IDs should be known, and all the networks, for example, if 1.1 network need to know about 2.1 as well as 3.1 up to 100.1, it has to know about all the networks. It has to know from which path to which path, which route to which route to go, everything to be given to the all the nodes, all the routers. Okay, so with this, let us start with the hands-on session using static routing process using Cisco packet tracer tool. We'll see that in the next video.